Have you ever been betrayed by the very people who were supposed to love and protect you? Have you ever felt so alone that you questioned everything you knew? This is my story. I'm 22 years old, born and raised in the UK in a Muslim family. My parents weren't the strictest, and over time they adapted to a more modern way of thinking. When I decided to move out for university, it was a huge battle. The idea of their daughter living alone in a different city was foreign to them. After a year of back and forth, they finally gave in. My first year was normal. I focused on my studies, went out a few times, and started dating a guy. My mum knew about it and didn't seem to care much, since my older sister had dated before. Everything seemed fine until summer break. My mom told me about a distant relative in Egypt who had fallen into a coma. She insisted that I fly over to visit, even offering to pay for my ticket. I didn't think much of it. I wanted to support my mum, and it felt like we had gotten closer. When I landed in Egypt, I was greeted by my siblings. The funeral took place a few days later, and I was ready to head back. But when I asked for my passport, I was told no. I thought it was a misunderstanding, but the next morning I asked again. Still no. Panic set in. I called my dad in the UK, crying, begging for help. He told me to calm down and that he would talk to my mum. Then, silence. He stopped answering my calls. The house was in a remote area. There was barely any Wi-Fi, electricity would go in and out because of the heat, and I was getting sick. My body rejected the food, and I was constantly throwing up. I tried reasoning with my siblings, but some of them actually agreed with my mom. I was stuck. No phone data, no way to get a SIM card, no one willing to help. My friends back home were my only hope. They contacted the embassy, and we started working on getting me an emergency passport. But I couldn't leave the house. I was watched, confined to a room in a country where I barely spoke the language. I had never felt so helpless. Weeks passed. I cried until I physically couldn't anymore. I wanted it all to end. If it weren't for my best friend, who called me whenever she could, I might not be here today. One night I reached my breaking point. After another argument filled with screaming and threats that if I made it back to the UK, they would have someone hurt me, I decided enough was enough. I packed a small handbag, left everything else behind, and booked a hotel in another city. With no data, no way to navigate, and no idea if I'd even make it. I ran. I snuck out, heart pounding, and got into a taxi. 45 minutes later, I was at the hotel. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. I finally slept. It didn't last long. A friend's mother found out about my escape and told my mom. Suddenly my phone was blowing up. Even my dad, the same one who ignored me for weeks, was calling. They tried to manipulate me into coming back, promising my passport if I returned. I didn't believe them. Then I was found. My location had been leaked. I was dragged back to the house, and the cycle of verbal abuse, threats, and isolation started all over again. This was the final straw. I had been trapped for almost 2 months when I finally managed to contact the police. A court order was set to be served, forcing my parents to return me to the UK or face prosecution. But the night before it was delivered, my sister overheard my plans and told my mom. Panic set in, my phone was confiscated, and I was interrogated. They demanded to see what I had told the police. Hours of verbal abuse followed. The next morning, my parents booked me on a flight back, under one condition. My dad would pick me up at the airport and take me straight to the police to say it was all a lie. I had one last chance. I managed to alert the authorities about my flight details. When I landed, armed police took me off the plane, out the back of the airport, and into safety. I was placed in a refuge in a city where I knew no one. My boyfriend had broken up with me. I had missed so much school that I couldn't finish my second year of university. I had no job, no home, no family, nothing. And then the messages started. My family reached out, saying they only wanted what was best for me, that they were trying to help. But they never once apologized. Friends told me I should forgive them, that it was one mistake, that they didn't know any better. But this didn't feel like a mistake. It felt premeditated. There are days I feel so alone that I almost consider reaching out. I grew up in a big family. Cutting them off was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I know in my heart, if the roles were reversed, I would have fought day and night for my siblings. And they didn't do the same for me. So AITA for refusing to forgive them,